Last week, UFC President Dana White made an interesting comment concerning Conor McGregor's return when he claimed that he had reached out to the Irishman with some potential fight ideas for early next year. Speaking during a recent appearance on ESPN, White pointed to a booking in the first half of 2021 for the former dual-weight world champion. And while he didn't exactly confirm that anything had been signed or agreed upon, he did seem to be optimistic about the chances of seeing Conor make the walk again. So what can we take away from that? Well, as most of you will know, McGregor was originally slated to fight 3 times this year, calling the 365-day plan his season, one that would be built around the idea of recapturing his momentum within the UFC. Of course, after bulldozing his way through Donald Cowboy Cerrone in 40 seconds, Conor's plans were thrown out completely once the world began its ongoing battle with the COVID-19 virus. Anyone who has their ear to the ground with this sport and its inner workings will understand exactly how much the absence of a live gate would hurt the potential earnings of a Conor McGregor-led event. And while some are quick to point out that most fighters are getting back to business as usual, fighting behind closed doors, I can't say I was surprised to see Conor take a backstep on his plans. However, now, given that the initial panic has worn off to some extent, it has become quite apparent that the idea of seeing 20,000 fans under one roof anytime soon is a bit of an unrealistic prospect. I'm not here to mull over the projections for the possibility of a return to fully attended events, but what I will say is, it did seem as though both McGregor and the UFC were content to see how this entire lockdown would shape up before progressing with their overall plan. Conor's gate numbers do of course bring in phenomenal numbers for the company, and while a return in early 2021 may well happen behind closed doors, pushing the date back that far will serve the purpose of allowing McGregor to find that consistency he craved this year, with the prospect of the following matchup and a quicker turnaround being more likely to be held under regular conditions attendance-wise. Because based on everything I've heard so far, I feel as though that's what McGregor is angling towards at this point. I believe that consistency is what both he and his fans need right now. His UFC 246 comeback against Donald Cerrone was indeed a hugely impressive return to form, but for most people, that bout stood as something of an underwhelming dive back into the sport that he had become something of an outsider to in recent years. Personally, I'm honestly all for tune-up fights, and I believe that there's room to have a discussion about our attitude towards them in the modern landscape of the sport. They grant fighters the opportunity to recapture their momentum and confidence in a way that allows them to build themselves up to a version of themselves that is better suited to challenging the elite of the elite when the time does inevitably come. I do think the UFC's constant focus on highly competitive elite level matchups is part of the reason why the promotion has become so successful. But when you look at things from the perspective of the fighters and the overall product, I would prefer to see these athletes taking tune-up fights where needed more often. In the eyes of a lot of fans, when you have the likes of Khabib, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje all competing regularly with the best of the best, it does take away from what Conor did in January. With that being said, Conor's tune-up is now out of the way. I don't begrudge him that, and I believe it was a necessary step for him at this pivotal point in his career's trajectory. But with that 40-second TKO now in the past, the time has come for him to prove that he deserves to be a fixture in the lightweight title picture. Gaethje has proven that, Poirier has proven that, and Ferguson has proven that. Whether you're a fan of these guys or not, their resume and recent run of form makes them deserving of the position they currently hold at 155 pounds. And though fights with Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, and even Manny Pacquiao are floating around in the media, for both the UFC and McGregor himself, only one name should matter. Khabib Nurmagomedov dominated Conor in the biggest fight in UFC history before proceeding to out-showman the showman by producing perhaps the most insane moment in UFC history, in jumping the cage post-fight to attack McGregor's teammate Dillon Danis. Now a global star and revered for his talents, the Eagle's status as a bona fide draw is only growing in strength with each passing month. Whether you look at this from Conor or Dana's perspective, that fight is the end goal here. I'm not saying it should or will happen, and believe me, it really shouldn't until Conor earns it, but at this point in McGregor's career, this dip in the story where the odds are stacked against him, the goal is simple. Work your way into a position where you find yourself in an octagon with Khabib Nurmagomedov. If he is motivated to continue to push boundaries and achieve greatness in this sport, Conor, being the man that he is, will understand that he must challenge and defeat the best fighter in the sport today, the man who made him look foolish during his darkest days in the spotlight. That is the end goal, and that should be the motivating factor. But it cannot happen in early 2021, not until Conor succeeds in re-establishing himself as a legitimate contender. I'm not saying there's not a chance the UFC won't jump the gun and just book it. even when it does come as a byproduct of harming the sport's overall integrity. And there is no doubt in my mind that Khabib vs McGregor 2 would be the biggest selling fight in UFC history, so there is that. But if Conor wants to do this correctly, if he wants to make up for all the damage he has done to his legacy and overall standing with the public, he needs to rebuild himself. If that truly is his motivation, as he says it is, then the path that lies before him is already set in stone. It will be incredibly difficult, but don't get me wrong, I'll never say that he can't do it. This man has proven himself to be great in the past, and as history will show us, one fight can change absolutely everything in an instant. We should never doubt fighters who have touched the heights that this man has. Personal opinions and prejudices aside, it would be incredibly foolish to do so. But for me, he needs to get in there with either Dustin Poirier or Tony Ferguson to validate his claims as a contender to the lightweight crown. And even then, if he can single himself out for a shot at the belt, I would not hold it against Khabib for refusing. Nurmagomedov was forced to go to a very dark place when he was tied to his great rival for all those months. When he emerged on the other side, he did so with a signature win and the lightweight title still around his waist. Knowing the man, I'm sure he is aware of what a rematch with Conor McGregor would require of him personally. Competitively, of course, he has every reason to be confident. As a horrible stylistic matchup for every fighter at lightweight right now, he would of course be a considerable favourite if they did in fact choose to run it back. But no matter how you feel about seeing this clash again, for the sake of both his overall career narrative and his momentum and confidence, Conor's next fight, if it does happen in early 2021, should be against a top lightweight contender. Hitting a low point like McGregor has is not a death sentence, no matter how many of you choose to frame it like that. We've seen numerous instances of seemingly impossible sporting comebacks in the past, and we will continue to see them again. Whether Conor truly has it in him to understand that he is at the foot of a mountain remains to be seen, but as someone who watched his initial rise through the sport, I know for years that Conor was a special athlete and a fighter of the highest caliber, a man with an incredible passion and desire to achieve and prove his doubters wrong. We know as an absolute certainty that Khabib has not fallen from that same pedestal, not even slightly. He's still right up there. I've said it before, this point in the Conor McGregor story will likely define the way he is remembered when he inevitably hangs up his gloves. Was he the surging force of nature that did everything there was to do before sinking into a decline and fading out of the reach of the elite from a competitive perspective? Or did he find a way to tap into that thing that made him great to begin with, in order to pull off his greatest success of them all? I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that if the climb truly does begin in early 2021, in my eyes, he has to prove himself to be deserving of a spot in that elite bracket. And to be honest, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. And as always, thank you for watching.